So again, welcome everybody to Cando's webinar here. We have our EDO panel today. Just briefly back again, my name is Trevor. I'm a board member with the Huu-ay-aht First Nations, or sorry, I'm Huu-ay-aht. I'm a board member with Cando. So it's great to have everybody here today from right across Canada. We just seen, I think it was Kelsey that's coming in from New Brunswick. I see others coming in from Vancouver, and then Kirk. I see Willie there coming in from Williams Lake. I think he's in Williams Lake. Good to see you, Willie. I know Ashley's in Vancouver as well. It's great to have you guys here. So we'll get started. Today's our EDO panel. We have some questions that we'll go over with our EDO panel. If there's opportunity for others can ask questions. I think what we'll start with today is introductions. So how about we start with Brad Mercer from Niska. Want to take a moment to introduce yourself? You're on mute there, Brad.
Thanks, Trevor. Good afternoon, everyone. I'm Brad Mercer from the North Coast, close to the Alaska border. I'm with the Niska Treaty. I'm from the village of Gitlick up there. I live and work in Burnaby, Vancouver area, representing our Vancouver society, which is 3 urban locals that are part of our Niska government.
Great, thanks for joining us today, Brad. Let's go over to Kirk Dressler from Williams Lake Indian Band.
Good afternoon, everyone. I'm Kirk Dressler from Williams Lake First Nation in the central interior of British Columbia. People may have seen us in the media recently with respect to the St. Joseph's Mission residential school investigation. So which received a considerable amount of profile. I am the Director of Legal and Corporate Services for Williams Lake First Nation. So I provide oversight for the Economic Development Department, title and rights, lands, and I'm also the CEO of Sugarcane Development Corporation, which is our primary economic development corporation. And I'm also the CEO of Unity Cannabis, our retail cannabis company, Sugarcane Cannabis, which is our cannabis cultivation entity, and Coyote Rock Limited Partnership, which is our real estate development entity as well. So good afternoon.
Awesome, thanks for joining us, Kirk. And next, Cynthia Rayner.
Good afternoon. My name is Cynthia Renner. I am the EDO for Huu-ay-aht First Nations. I am currently working on my doctorate in business with a focus on sustainable economic development on First Nations lands.
Awesome. Well, thanks to the 3 of you for joining us today and doing this panel discussion with us. Thanks for everybody else for joining us. And we'll start getting into questions. I think if what I do is I have a list of questions here that I'll be asking the panelists, and pretty much I think how I'll start is we'll just start with one person and move to the next panel member to answer the question. If there is others that are here that want to ask the panelists any questions, you can use your button functions there. Under reactions, there's a raise the hand feature. Feel free, raise your hand if there's a question that you want to ask the panelists. I'm totally open to opening up the floor for questions. Other than that, I have a list of questions here that I'm going to ask the EDOs for an awesome, one of my passions of Indigenous economic development. So first question is, what does economic development and prosperity mean to you? And we'll start with Kirk.
Yeah, thanks, Trevor. It's a broad question, but I think economic development means, for me, it means creating opportunity or revenue for our community and for the members and for the region generally. For us, it can occur through the creation of businesses or the development of assets, but it can also occur through the establishment of partnerships. And it can also occur by creating an environment that is conducive to business. And we do that. So, you know, we engage in businesses, we create businesses, we partner with others, but we're also very engaged in creating institutions and systems that foster business. And so for us, you know, we're very much in terms of looking for ways to be creative in terms of governance. We're a First Nations land management community, so we have that form of sectoral self-government over lands management. That's given us a lot more flexibility to do things like develop our lands, to lease lands, to move at the speed of business. So those kind of things are critical. We're under the First Nations Fiscal Management Act, so we have a financial administration law. We are a borrowing member of the First Nations Finance Authority. So we're utilizing institutions of governance like that and the tools that come with it to create an environment for a business. And we also, just sort of aware that we have to be perceived as being a place where people, are welcome to do business. And so we're very much focused on building relationships with those in the community and with other businesses, and trying to build those relationships. So I guess that's it in a nutshell for me. It's all of those things. At the end of the day, it's about improving the lives, first and foremost, of our members and those in the community around us. And that's not just, money is one thing, but it's also seeing these incremental changes that allow us to achieve the goals of reconciliation. Indications that people have jobs, that they have educations, that they're spiritually well, that they are enjoying their culture. They have the luxury to do that, that they're, they have the ability to practice their language. These are things that people do when they're more economically comfortable. When they're not comfortable, when they're struggling to make ends meet, they just don't have the luxury to do those things that add value to their lives. So at the end of the day, those are the indicators that we look at in terms of economic success that flow from economic development.
Awesome, thanks, Kirk. Yeah, for prosperity, it's so important to be able to, be flexible and be able to meet the business needs. So move at the pace of business, not at the pace of government.
Yeah, you bet.
And I know that one very well. I'm on both sides there, so I know that. It's great. Brad, so what does economic development and prosperity mean to you?
Thanks, Trevor. It's a big word, just like what Kirk said. It depends on where you are, who you are. We are in the North Coast, the tip of BC, middle of nowhere, basically. So to attract business and prosperity is a battle, but it's becoming a reality now. It's about engaging and looking at the right models to use to move towards right partnerships. And partnerships is not just for us to work with corporations, but to actually learn how to work with our other Indigenous neighbors on a business alliance platform, and to learn how to work with our other Niska communities as well. So that's how we play the game as a treaty organization. And we do the same in the Lower Mainland, which we have done quite in a big way. We've moved that way with Lower Mainland organizations to help support our economic development roles here in the urban environment, working with other Indigenous parties that are the rightful owners of this area, and to work with other multicultural organizations to see how we can match and work together through not just economic development, but community development, and to learn how to support our small businesses that we're also building through economic development. It's not just for us to create a big economic arm and go for it. We also need to understand our members are more important than ourselves. We need to work for them, meaning we'd have to support them. So in order to create an economy for your tribe, you got to support everybody. You got to work with everybody. So that's what it means to me.
Awesome, thanks, Brad. I think you hit some really important points there in regards to partnerships, the rural challenges that a lot of our Indigenous communities face in BC, and those urban opportunities that are there as well. And citizens is definitely an important part to our economy and entrepreneurship. Thanks. On to Cynthia. Cynthia, same question. What does economic development and prosperity mean to you?
To me, well, besides generating revenue, economic development to me represents the protection of our environment, the cultural preservation, and social economic equity. We also create partnerships. And as being a modern treaty government, we have the flexibility to create businesses that fit our culture.
Great. Thanks, Cynthia. And I'm going to have to, as a facilitator, I'd mentioned at the beginning I'm Hawaiian there, so I don't get to answer any Hawaiian questions. I usually did, but all right. So let's start on to the next one. You know, I think Brad will go to you because you had mentioned it. You know, the question is around: is your community located First Nations community, or is it an urban community, and how does that affect your role, nonprofit or for profit? So if you want to expand on that a little bit more in regards to, you know, our local First Nations community, ruralness, and then also urban as well.
Yeah, for sure. Our Niska Zamix Vancouver Society has been residing on Coast Salish territory for a long time. And the governance comes from our Niska Lissam's government back on treaty land up in the North Coast. 3 urban locals, Terrace, Prince Rupert, Vancouver. We hold over 1,800 Niska citizens that reside in the Lower Mainland that we look after. Programs and services, outreach. ECDEV is new, started last year, so I'm giving her on trying to build that structure for this society. And since then, we formed our corporation, the Zamix Development Corp, and we're at work up north on Niska Treaty lands. Different variety of divisions we carry for that corporation with many partners. And that's in progress, ongoing on an hourly basis. So with our corporation, the mandate for profit entity is to support our society. So now we created a housing society in the Lower Mainland. We've secured 6 properties for developments, short, medium, long-term projects. Some of them are 400 units, some of them are smaller. So the structure with that is that we're moving outside of the Lower Mainland boundaries for other housing development projects where our Niskas live. So those are short-term where we can actually, instead of 20 binders, we can do it on 1 binder, put it that way. So with the paperwork that comes with housing development in an urban environment where you deal with municipalities and whatnot. So basically that's what it is.
Great, thanks for that, Brad. And then Kirk, for Williams Lake Indian Band, question is, your community located on First Nations community versus urban community, and how does that affect your role? Non-profit versus for profit.
In our location, we're located in the central interior on a major transportation corridor about 10 kilometers outside of the city of Williams Lake, which is a city of about 12,000 people, which is a kind of a major transportation hub in the central interior. So it's an interesting blend because we're at the end of the lake, about 10 kilometers out, so not that far removed. But all around us, that our territory spreads pretty broadly, and a lot of the areas aren't very heavily populated. So it's kind of an interesting blend in terms of there's an urban element because we have our main reserve, IR number 1, is relatively close to Williams Lake. We have a small urban reserve in Williams Lake. We have property holdings in the city of Williams Lake. But then we also have sort of responsibilities and opportunity in the broader territory that's quite rural. So it kind of informs the way that we approach economic development. There's kind of multiple approaches to what we're doing. We do a lot of things, obviously, that sort of capitalize on our location. We have a number of sort of retail business assets. We have cannabis is a big thing for us, which I'll talk a bit more about in the upcoming questions, but we have businesses in a small urban reserve that we're developing. We have a downtown office that we use to engage with business. We have development along the highway corridor. But we also engage in a lot of activity in the broader territory. So we've developed partnerships with people that are providing services for proponents throughout the territory. We're engaged with a number of the major mines and have impact benefit agreements. So we're providing services and capitalizing on opportunities there. So we're doing a lot of things all over the place. At the end of the day, you know, a lot of what we do is for profit. Technically, we're driven by, you know, a desire to, you know, create revenue and opportunity for the nation. But, you know, what we do with that is to also foster things that are just for the general benefit of the community that don't make money, right? Like that the goal is not at the end of the day to create money for the sake of creating money. As I indicated earlier, the goal is to create revenue with the goal of sort of transforming the community. So, you know, we use our corporate revenue to foster government programs and to provide services for members and to ensure that they can sort of take the benefit of the things that we're doing on their behalf in the area of economic development. So it is interesting for us, like we're doing a lot of things that, you know, people would think of, you know, economic development entities doing in an urban environment, but we're also involved in some of the stuff on the periphery in terms of resource extraction with forestry, with mining, and providing services in relation to those too. I haven't noted yet that professional services are a big thing for us. We're very much involved in the provision of archaeological services. We have 4 archaeologists on staff that work for our nation and for our development corporation, and we have 15 to 20 seasonal field staff as well that support those 4 archaeologists. So that is sort of a dual role of, you know, there's an economic development component of us providing those services, but there's also a stewardship component of us being involved, making sure that these heritage resources are protected and generally keeping an eye out from a stewardship perspective. So that's kind of a little bit about us and our snapshot of where we are and how we operate.
Thanks for that, Kirk. Yeah, you know, the stewardship and management is a really key piece to, you know, I'd say all Indigenous communities in BC. You know, we've been here for generations, and I know we plan to be here for generations to come. And so that stewardship and management is a really key piece to that. Cynthia, how about you?
Well, essentially, we are located on traditional lands. We have satellite offices in not far from our traditional lands. We are a modern treaty government, so that gives us the flexibility to use the same processes on and off our lands. We do have profit operations that are with our development corporation, and we have a nonprofit cultural tour operation that we run from our government.
Yeah, definitely. We, through Hooayah Treaty, have the opportunity through our business arm for profit and then through our HFN governance to do things at a social enterprise or a nonprofit level. Thanks, Cynthia. We'll move on. I don't see any hands coming up yet. So my next question, maybe I'll start with you, Cynthia, is you know, the pandemic has really created a lot of, you know, angst and uncertainty with our economic structures, our economic ventures, even just knowing or having some idea of where we're going. I think it's always good to reflect back on things that we're doing well. So can you share a success story with us on economic development from Hooayah's perspective?
Well, we did purchase the market, restaurant, motel, pub, lodge and marina, bed and breakfast, gas station, rental homes, several commercial lots, and operate a campground that we have turned over to our development corporation to operate. On our government side, we created Kian Tours, which is a culturally guided hike to the certified National Historic Site that is a 5,000-year-old Hooayah village. And we also joint venture and partner with a fish cannery and oyster farm.
That is correct. You've done quite a bit since signing treaty in 2011.
Yes.
There's other initiatives that we pursue as well from Hawaiian side that go through other means that we have there, other institutions. Thanks for that, Cynthia. We'll go back to Dirk. Kirk, sorry. I think I just called you Dirk. Share a success story with us in regards to economic development for the Williams Lake Indian Band.
Well, we've got a lot of sort of success stories in economic development. I think it's been a real focus for Williams Lake First Nation over the last decade, in particular under the leadership of Chief Sellers, who's listening in. He'll correct me if I stray too far. I mean, I think it's a passion. Chief Sellers worked in the area of economic development before he was chief. And so there's been a real focus because we recognize, as Chief Clarence Lewis says, that it's, the economic horse that pulls the social cart, that we need to have that level of affluence, as I said, for people to enjoy their lives and to practice their culture. So we're really cognizant of that. I mean, I think a thing that has given Williams Lake First Nation a lot of profile across the country over the last several years is our involvement in the cannabis industry. We concluded a couple of years ago the first government-to-government agreement around cannabis retail in British Columbia under Section 119 of the Cannabis Control and Licensing Act. So BC is somewhat unique in that it has the ability for the government to enter into agreements with Indigenous nations around cannabis retail that modify the application of the provincial law. And so we were the first nation to do that, and one of only two. Cowichan has a time-limited agreement as well. But it facilitated us operating under our own retail brand in the area of cannabis. So we've developed a brand called Unity Cannabis. And so we have operations in Williams Lake. We have a store in Merritt. We have a store in Penticton, and we're opening a store in Lackahash. And the cool thing about it is it's integrated with our cannabis cultivation facility, because the other part of that agreement with the province is that they enable us to do what they call farm gate cannabis. So we grow the cannabis at our facility in Williams Lake, and we can also sell it from the facility and move it to our stores throughout the province. So there's a form of vertical integration around our cannabis production through to our retail. So it's pretty cool. We are entirely legal in the eyes of the province. We are fully insured. We can have bank accounts. A lot of the nations that are operating in the cannabis space are doing so under the the sovereignty model, or what they call the red market, which is in the eyes of the province and the federal government not legal. And it creates real challenges because you can't do banking. The banking institutions don't want to deal with you. You can't obtain insurance, and so there's liability for the business and potentially for the community and for the employees of these operations. So that's pretty exciting. It's been a significant success. It's required a lot of time and money to invest into this. Our cultivation facility is now fully licensed. Actually, the chief and I are heading down there this afternoon, where our first crop is fully underway. So that's a real success. It's certainly not the only one that we've enjoyed recently, but it's one that's received a huge amount of profile, and we get inquiries across the country in relation to what we're doing in the area of cannabis, because it's a difficult industry for most people to navigate through. So we've been doing our best to engage with communities and kind of share our experience and help them find the way if they're interested in this field as well.
Awesome, Kirky. Now that's it's a very social topic right now. There's a lot of people in the cannabis space, being the next best thing, as good as coffee, just this new industry that's coming up. And if you don't mind, I just want to stick with that for a moment, because it's a great success, and I followed and seen yourself, Willie, and the William Lakes Indian Band, move this forward, and been impressed by that, because as you mentioned, it doesn't you can't go through that without challenges, which is because you mentioned you're one of the first ones to be able to go through those steps. So, pioneering through that, you want to maybe just share a couple challenges that you guys went through in order to get to where you are today with the cannabis company?
Yeah, sure, Trevor. I mean, I can say that like we started out working with another company sort of in the red market in the sovereignty space. And we found, for the reasons that I talked about earlier, that it was a real challenge, because it's difficult to do banking. We were finding that the company was maintaining this sort of the accounts and managing it. Their accounts were being shut down, money was being pushed around, and it was a little bit sketchy, to say the least. And it wasn't something that a government that's highly organized and structured and regulated has a great deal of comfort with. Perhaps even more importantly than that, we started to ask questions about product quality and its origin. We couldn't obtain certificates of analysis to ensure that the product was safe and that it had been tested. We received a shipment of moldy gummies that were something that looked to be potentially dangerous if they were consumed. And it was that point that we said, okay, this isn't kind of a space that we can be occupying. This isn't sustainable. This isn't good for our people. We feel like we're just trying to grab a buck here, and that's not what we want to be in business for. So at that point, we pivoted, and we really redoubled our efforts to conclude this agreement with the province to make us legal under terms that were reasonable. And then we ultimately did conclude this agreement. Now, that's all great, but it takes a lot of energy and effort, and significantly, it takes a lot of money to get these things underway. So that's been a challenge. We probably have close to $4 million invested in our cannabis infrastructure between our cultivation facility and our 4 retail outlets so far. And that it requires some pretty skilled labor as well. And so trying to track down those people and navigate through the bureaucracy of the system is super challenging. And we're talking about this with a reporter yesterday. This is why a lot of communities just pack it in the early days and go to the unregulated space, because they say, well, look, it's too expensive, it's too complicated. We just need to do it cheaper and simpler and cut some corners. Unfortunately, that often comes at the cost of sort of public safety, and it creates a liability for everyone. So a lot of challenges there, financial and organizational, and in terms of capacity. And we punctuated yesterday in our dialogue with someone who's doing a story on the cannabis industry in the red market that Canada and the various provinces need to assist these First Nations in developing a roadmap so they can enter this space relatively easily, and they need to develop programs that provide funding to allow them to obtain capital to create the institutions that they need to operate in the cannabis space. So a lot of challenges, and they're not ones that are easy to overcome. We're pretty persistent and have a really talented group here. But it takes a lot of determination to really navigate in this and many other industries as well. So we hope to see other communities have similar success. We employ probably 50 people in total so far in this kind of cannabis area, and it has the potential to grow. The majority of those people are either members or Indigenous, but we're providing opportunity to others as well. So it's exciting to see this happen, and it supports the general goal of reconciliation. And I think the province recognizes that as well. So exciting times.
Yeah, definitely, and no pun intended on the growing part, hey?
Yeah, that's right.
Well, I think a few key things that I heard there in regards to timing, capital, government relations, and then the liability, I think is really important, because as all three of you had mentioned, it's really important that your citizens are supporting and involved in these things that we're doing on behalf of the nations. Thanks for that. So Brad, on to you. The question is, share a success story of economic development from Niska, and if you like, if there's any follow-up in regards to challenges that you've gone through to get to your successes, please add those as well.
Sure, thanks, Trevor. I guess the first one that we want to identify is recent agreement we've done with a couple of Lower Mainland Vancouver-based groups that partnered with our society. So we can now move forward and look at our housing platform. That's one of the biggest check marks for me, the big happy face sticker for our people. So it's going to be good times in the future for our people that are residing in the Lower Mainland, whether it's for education or work or medical. We're there now. Like, that's a big win for us, and our Nisga'a Lissam's government back home endorsed us on that move that we made, and they're in full support of us. So it's a good thing for us to work on. In terms of business, we've started in November, actually getting down and getting projects on the go up north, back on treaty land with different partners into the mining industry, with construction, with heavy equipment, supplying opportunities for Indigenous people. They're not all Nisga'a, they're Indigenous and others. Everybody knows how we struggle with our workforce. Not everybody wants to work in a bush or in a camp. So we have to make use of what we got and who's available, kind of thing. So we've engaged, we're actually doing pretty well with partners with a few mines up there, gold mines, and there's more coming up pretty quick. And we're focusing on our own Nisga'a LNG project. We're working with our partners to be a big part of that. We're into agriculture. So all of this requires land. So I've been working with our Nisga'a government lands department for a few months now, to identify the right piece of land that we can acquire to use for our success, for our business, right from the Alaska border, more or less, all the way down to the bottom end to where our 4 communities are, all along that right-of-way corridor. So we're getting into a lot of supply chain and a lot of partners in manufacturing. So we're getting a lot of partners getting their products to Canada from another country, closer to market. And we are 6 hours less travel time by shipping lanes from China or USA, India, put it that way. So we have that port property where we have a partnership already, and we're just restructuring our stevedore and company business, where we offload and load, import, export. So the plan with that is we want to identify Indigenous businesses throughout our Canadian business world and see what kind of products they have that can bring it through our territory. We've got the laydown areas, we'll have the warehousing areas. Food industry is huge for us, for seafood and for on land. A lot of it's going to be agricultural, inland fish farming, and a lot of new test projects that we're looking at as well. So we work with different divisions. We don't just sell cupcakes. We partnered with every industry that's going to be around our territory for a long time. So we want to make sure that we're matched up with the right partners to win bids, to do work for these big proponents. So that's the success stuff. It's ongoing on a daily basis. We're still engaging, looking for more partners. Cannabis is one of ours to introduce to our territory. Same with farming. Tourism is the biggest kicker for us. You know, we've got the same scenery Banff for Lake Louise or Whistler has, and to go with that, we got huge glaciers. So we're working on our own bottling water facility to start get that going for export and domestic. The negative sides is just trying to get our people to understand how this corporation is going to work for the betterment of our society, because not everybody wants to be a rock driller or a fisherman or a logger, and we have to identify who our people are and who we have to work with in terms of making a market ready for us to be on our database, to be a part of our team, whether it's management, administrative, or just workers or subcontractors supporting our small businesses through our economic development department. So that's the part I face, is trying to do my monthly reports to our community and our boards and trying to educate them about this is why we want to move forward in economics in different ways. It's for the betterment of our society, for our people, our neighbors, our friends. And I've had no problems working with our government, Niska government. They're supporting us every step of the way. Like the lands department is open arms, giving us opportunities. What would be the best piece of land for it to use to develop for this and that? So it's just about dealing with the people, and you have to be, you got to treat them well, put it that way, because you want them to support what you want to do. And that's my negative part, is just trying to make sure that they understand us, that we're moving in the right path and we're there for them. Thank you.
Thanks, Brad. Yeah, that's a real key thing in regards to our nations moving forward. Is we have to move forward together as a community as a whole. So whether you work for the government or business or a community member, everybody's got to move together. And just hearing your comments, I think one of the things I'm hearing is full participation in the economy. And full participation means, being at the table with those people, those operators that are within your territory, and seeing what they're doing and how Niska can participate in that. So that's great. So we do have a question from Kelsey. And Kelsey, you got it looks like your mic is on. So she's got two questions. Kelsey, your first question.
I don't mean to take as much airtime as I probably am going to, so I apologize in advance. Just two questions for the panel. Any advice for non-Indigenous organizations that are neighboring Indigenous communities that are, really interested and committed to recruiting Indigenous peoples to join their organization? That's my first question.
Awesome. That's a great question. Cynthia, do you want to start?
Well, we're looking for Indigenous people to for our organization. We find that's one of the challenges we have is recruiting First Nations to work within our organization. If you were looking for partnering with the local First Nations, I would say that would be your first step, to go and visit them and see what they have to offer.
Great, thanks, Cynthia. Yeah, I think a relationship, partnering with the Indigenous community is really important for people that are, here watching this webinar or see it later. If you see it on our website, you can go to SETI, Community Economic Development Initiative. That's a great place to see some examples of relationship building between non-Indigenous and Indigenous communities. Kirk, how about you?
Yeah, it's a tough one. Like Cynthia says, our communities themselves, like Williams Lake First Nation, is trying to recruit more of its members and other Indigenous people to provide capacity. So I think we're all hunting for that. I guess with us and with these other sort of neighboring communities and businesses, I think they really, they have to make themselves attractive. So, I think it is about building relationships and demonstrating that there's an appreciation for the history of the communities in whose territory that they're operating. Because I think a lot of our members want to know that the institutions that they're working for really do understand and respect these things, and that they're committed to being sort of a progressive employer, and that they're an employer of choice too. I think our members are looking for opportunities that afford them some flexibility and some sort of creativity in how they advance. And so supporting them in terms of capacity capacity development and education and accommodating their needs just as people too, right? Their family responsibilities and those kinds of things. I think that's the case for everyone, Indigenous and non-Indigenous, but it's particularly important. I think I see here to our members, they're looking for those things. That's why they often want to work, you know, for their community, because they know that their community understands and appreciates these things and will afford them that kind of flexibility and latitude. More and more, I think employers are sort of understanding that they need to be an employer of choice. So I think that these kind of things are critical. But you know, the relationship building and the understanding and appreciation is key. You know, I don't know if anybody's kind of seen in the media, we have a tough relationship with the city of Williams Lake. There's a very interesting city council here that has made remarks about residential schools and sort of questioned whether they are, you know, they should be criticized to the extent that they are, and suggested that there was maybe favorable elements to residential schools, and it's created some real friction. And you can see in that there are very, very few Indigenous people working for the city of Williams Lake, and you can understand why. That's not the kind of culture that that people want to kind of work amongst, right? And so it's about the environment of those businesses and their kind of their understanding of the world that they're working in, and their commitment to having good relationships with First Nation people. So those are just my thoughts off the cuff.
Thanks, Kirk. I think one there that's really helpful, Kelsey, is the idea of understanding Indigenous peoples within their community, what their needs are. It's fairly consistent and probably across Canada in regards to our desire to participate in our community. So on the West Coast, we have potlatches and things like that. You know, on the East Coast, they have their ceremonies. So the ability for an Indigenous person to participate on their cultural side at the same time being able to you know, participate in the labor forces is definitely a balance there. Thanks, Kurt. Brad, any advice for Kelsey on her question?
Sure, it's a good question as well. Actually, I have a Zoom meeting right after this one to actually talk about that with a local municipality back up north. We created an engagement in December to look at opportunities to learn how to work together, because we have a lot of projects in that area surrounding that community, and we have to learn how to come to an understanding to identify opportunities and create the right partnerships. So we're working with the city of Stewart right now, and that's right by the Alaska border. So where we have Niskas working in a port, Niska loggers, Niska fishermen, miners, trucking, transportation, and all these new stuff that we're bringing in there. So we're building housing units up there and apartments. And so Stewart's offering us opportunities to take over a lot of their properties and redevelop for small businesses. And they understand the gaps that First Nations face, such as us, just starting out in November in the mining industry, where even though we have a master sheet, that's our database of all of our qualified workers. They could be a doctor, a lawyer, a finance accountant, a nurse, medevac, construction workers, welders, you name it, we got that. And that's the only way we win bids on projects, is we have our own master sheet of qualified people that are Indigenous. We own that right. And then we have a greenhorn list. I say that because I used to be in the mining construction industry, running equipment all over Canada and Alaska for 27 years. So of course, we're going to have a foundation platform to introduce brand new people to our business concepts. They're going to be greenhorns. They're going to quit left and right. They're going to be scared to leave mama. They're going to be fighting on the phone, arguing and doing that Jerry Springer stuff. That's just normal. A lot of them are going to quit about not having the right financial literacy, how to survive in an urban environment, how to survive back on the res. You know, that's just the way life is. And we're not ready for that as entrepreneurs, as business companies. We're not thinking about that. We're just trying to, oh, we're going to hire people, but we aren't. If you look at the success rate of the amount of money BC has spent on First Nations people trying to get them ready, millions. And what do we got to show for? And why are we talking about this? Why do we still have this problem about finding our own people to come to work for us or support them with their small business? So this is where I'm at. This is what I'm dealing with. And this is why we're talking to our local municipality that's in our region up north to come to a solution. How can we work together? We can't just hire Niska people or other First Nations. We got to hire who's ready. And that's the bottom line. And I hope I answered your question, Kelsey.
That's perfect. Thank you. Thank you all. And I think you all kind of touched on my second question, so I think I'm good. Thanks, Trevor. Thanks, everyone.
Thanks, Kelsey. That was a great question. You know, labor force is a real key issue. You know, it's something that we're not just contending with at the Indigenous level. You're seeing it now through the pandemic, straight across Canada and globally. There's a lot of labor force issues. So it probably won't be the last time we talk about it, but hopefully we'll take steps moving forward and moving things forward. So we talked a little bit about challenges that each of you have ran into. I just mentioned the pandemic. We've been in this pandemic now for way too long. It's coming up on, it is 2 years, coming up on 2 years. It's been too long. So for each of you, what have been some of the challenges over the last couple of years through the pandemic or as a result of the pandemic? Let's start with Kirk.
Thanks, Trevor. I mean, it's been challenging, I think, you know, just speaking broadly, just in terms of the kind of the emotional element. It's difficult for everyone. I think just the mental element of being sort of stuck in this pandemic. We went through a particularly tough stretch in early 2021 where we lost some community members when COVID sort of exploded and before vaccination was rolled out. So psychologically, you know, that's been very wearing and it's been tough to navigate through. And so we had to invest a lot of energy into the sort of the welfare of our community and dealing with their general health and the health of our staff. So just navigating through that kind of broader environment in the pandemic has been really difficult. Sort of aside from that, you know, there have been other specific challenges in relation to COVID. One thing, you know, because I think Brad and Cynthia both touched on it too, is, you know, the importance of engaging with your community and having their buy-in on what you're doing. It's been really tough in the middle of the pandemic. I've been working exclusively for First Nations communities for more than 20 years. And that's the thing I love the most, is getting in front of a community and having a dialogue and explaining the things and facing the tough questions and sort of forming the projects that I'm trying to do and ensuring that I have buy-in. And that's critical to the success of economic development initiatives. And in the middle of the pandemic, where you just can't physically gather with that kind of ease, it's really tough, right? And so we've had to pivot and do more of this kind of thing, the virtual engagement. And it's worked. Like, we've managed to make it go, and we've been quite creative in the way that we're doing things. We're more heavily reliant on technology and social media, but there's still a certain portion of the population that doesn't have the same degree of comfort with that. Yeah, in particular, elders, like, this is technology that they don't necessarily readily embrace. And so it's made it tough, because those are voices that we really, really want to hear. Like, those are the, you know, the important kind of knowledge keepers in the community, and they pass on the values that should really inform the things that we're doing. So that's been a really difficult one for me, because like, I love that part of it, and I think it's important to get to having successful projects. So we have managed as best we can. It's been a bit easier recently when we've been able to have more kind of events, but it caused us to have to look at things a bit differently and do things a bit, you know, differently than I have for the bulk of my career, and most people have for their careers, for sure. So that's been a challenge. And then I think, as everybody else, we've also found a challenge around the availability of labor. It's been a competitive market in the middle of the pandemic. You know, there has been a fairly abundant amount of government money floating around, and that's served as an incentive for some people to say, hey, you know what, I'm not up for going out into the workplace. I would rather kind of ride this out, and it's made for a shortage of bodies. And so we're competing aggressively to get those people, as other businesses and governments are. And so that's been tough, because we have more projects and more things going on than we ever have before, and yet it's hard to find the especially the skilled people to do the things that we need to do. So we've managed to adapt. We're fortunate that we have a strong group, and we've really made an effort on being an employer of choice. We've had to be better as an employer. We've had to offer sort of better benefits, more programs, get creative with things like we fund people's like members and others, their driving programs so that they can get their licenses back. We've done capacity development. We've paid for people to get training that's well outside of the scope of the work that they're doing, just to be as creative as we can to bring people into the fold. And so those are some of the challenges that we faced and some of the ways that we've tried to navigate through it.
Yeah, the pivot to virtual has been a fun one for the pandemic. It's I've never heard so much you're on mute. I think it's one of the memes of the pandemic. So same question to you, Cynthia. What are challenges have you ran into with the pandemic, and how have you adapted?
I think Kirk covered quite a few of the things that we've seen. It's that face-to-face, when we come forward to the community with our projects, or that I'm thinking they're getting an understanding when we present our economic development plan, but not really if they're on, they don't have their video on. We've also found the shortage of workers, that because of their closeness on reserve, they tend, there's the outbreaks that we see. And now it's either, this flu going around, or it's a continual, I guess, challenge to find people to keep our businesses running on a constant basis. Right now we are going, the province has approved the chip seal of the road, and finding workers to construction workers has been a challenge. Yeah, elders with their technology. That's all I can think of right now.
Great. Yeah, the challenges of labor force and sick leave, and availability of people is definitely been a challenge in the pandemic. It's yeah, I'm going to be happy when there's less variance going on and more stability, but who knows when. Brad, to you, what are some of the challenges Niska has ran into through the pandemic, and how have you guys adapted to those challenges through the pandemic?
Yeah, for sure. We've faced it all, just like everybody else, because we are an urban organization living right smack in the middle of the Lower Mainland. It's a lot of people here compared to back home on treaty land where we've got low population. So yeah, a lot of the changes happen with our office operations. Everybody was pretty much working at home unless you were required to be at the office, such as our programs and service department or outreach, that kind of stuff, where they had a lot of traffic coming in from our memberships to get whatever they're providing for them. So a lot of our grants that we were planning on apply for, we cut back on a lot of the grant applications, because why try apply for a grant when you can't use it when you're not allowed to gather? So we did a lot of cutbacks on that. We stopped our community development initiative that was supposed to be at the end of this month in Vancouver, which is an annual cultural event hosted by our community, the Niska Hobiye celebration. So that's canceled till next year. So that put a big damper on us. That's our big cultural tourism finale to kind of showcase who we are in the Lower Mainland and share our culture with all of the other First Nations throughout the province that come to celebrate with us. So yeah, it's kind of shortlisted a lot of items. A lot of it was explained already by Kirk and Cynthia. I won't repeat myself on those items, but we are restructuring. We do have our online sessions with our membership. We offer incentives for them to participate, to be online, to see our monthly reports, our quarterly reports, that kind of thing. We always include our elders to make sure that they're present with us. So we encourage our youth to take part. It's part of our school system where they learn our language. So we don't stop our language during COVID. We keep our culture strong, but to gather, we had to stop that. Hopefully we can get back together this summer, then catch up on a lot of things that we want to do for our community. So that's about it.
Yeah, the gatherings and the ability for Indigenous communities and peoples to do what we've been doing for thousands of years has definitely been impacted by the pandemic. I don't remember the last time I was at a potlatch. I look forward to how we describe it here, going into the halls again and hearing the drums go again and being able to do our business again, you know, on the cultural side. And I've had the chance of participating in your guys' celebration in Vancouver. It's pretty awesome to go see. I love the entrance, the day one when everybody comes in. It's pretty awesome to see. It's again the thing that makes you proud to be Niska or to be Indigenous, is to partake in those events and be able to do them.
Yeah, that's great. Hopefully we can host our new community development event this August, but we'll see.
Yeah, definitely. No, definitely. Thanks for that, Brad. You know, the pandemic has been full of challenges for everybody around the world, Indigenous and non-Indigenous. You know, some of the things that I reflect on right now is the economic recovery. You know, what does the economic recovery look like? You know, how are we as Indigenous peoples, communities, and businesses going to participate in that? I've talked to Minister Kalan about this. You know, one of my concerns about the economic recovery is I hope Indigenous peoples and communities and businesses don't fall through the cracks, because there's a lot of sectors out there that are wanting to see support through this economic recovery. There's a lot of work ahead of us. I think there's a lot of opportunities as well. And that's actually one of our last questions, is for each of you, has the pandemic offered any economic opportunities to your nation? And were there any partnerships created through the pandemic as a result of it? Cynthia, let's start with you.
Well, we've had the opportunity to go viral on our Keehan tours. We've also partnered with several other First Nations for visitors traveling to Vancouver Island to enjoy First Nations coastal experience offerings. I know the challenges outweighed the opportunities, but there's an opportunity coming out of the pandemic to move our Hawaiʻi economy forward in forestry, fisheries, and tourism, and especially tourism, because we have the Chip Seal Road that is going to be a game changer for Banfield. That is now a logging road, an hour and a half on logging road. So there's a lot of work ahead.
Yes, definitely. And for people watching right now, it's an hour and a half to get out to Tofino. There's over 1 million people that go to Tofino right now, and it'll take you 45 minutes to get out to our territory. So it's gonna be great. It's gonna be awesome. It's accessible. I'm looking forward to it. Thanks, Cynthia. Kirk, has the pandemic offered Williams Lake Indian band any economic opportunities, and has there been any partnerships that have come about through that time?
Well, I guess things certainly haven't slowed down during the pandemic. That's the interesting thing. We've been busier in economic development than ever before. I think there's some things that we wouldn't have anticipated that are just sort of certainly trends in British Columbia that we've managed to capitalize on. Real estate development here, for instance, heading into the pandemic, we had created sort of a multi-use subdivision that has commercial and residential components. It's a new thing for our part of British Columbia, and certainly not new across the country to be doing, development on First Nations land and having residential development. For the Caribou, it's a fairly new thing. So there was, the realtors and the lawyers and everything. Wow, we've never really done this before. We're not sure. They weren't sort of deterring their clients from going that way. But we found when things, for whatever reason, the real estate market is super hot here in British Columbia, and that's spun into our region, and we've just blown up in terms of real estate development. And so now, like, we have huge traction on our residential development. We're selling rapidly, and so we're taking the benefit of this trend that's occurred, where people seem to be investing in property, and they're doing a lot of they're putting their money into property too as an investment, not just as their home. So that's been something that's been pretty cool. And we formed a number of partnerships during the pandemic, not really specific to opportunities that have arisen through the pandemic, but it seems to have caused people to sort of look and to be more creative just out of necessity, because we can bring some additional capacity from a labor perspective, and because we're well connected with various major industry proponents, with the BC Hydros, with Enbridge, with others. So people have seemed to be more kind of self-reflective during the pandemic and recognize that building relationships with First Nations is a key part of their long-term success. So yeah, we built a lot of partnerships over the last couple of years, and it's really created a lot more opportunity for us. So it's been interesting times, exciting economically, despite the fact that there's challenges with the pandemic.
Yeah, great points around real estate there, Kirk. It's really interesting to see how the market has shifted through the pandemic. It's a hot market all across. There seems to be not enough supply, and I think there's a lot of interest there. So great. And I think one other thing that you hit there that's really important is I think the recognition now that Indigenous communities is good opportunity. It's good business. There's opportunities there for long-term thinking around moving things forward. So it's great to see what you guys are doing there in Williams Lake Indian Band. Brad, how about yourself? Has the pandemic offered any economic opportunities for Niska and partnerships? Has there been any created?
Yeah, for sure. Definitely for our Challenges Development Corp. We're moving forward pretty good with a lot of big partnerships. We've been also doing a lot of sessions with the provincial government for tourism development, for import-export, resource development. So we're going pretty good on a government level with our Nisga'a government, with the lands department, to identify how we can utilize certain properties within our treaty territories or fee simple properties. So yeah, it's going good. It all fits into all of our different division partnerships. Again, we don't just sell cupcakes. We're involved in everything pretty much, more or less, that we could bring to the table for our treaty area. So it's going well, even though a lot of it was online, but hopefully we can get into some face-to-face sessions soon. Our last face-to-face was in early December, when we signed an MOU with some provinces in China to partner with us on some business opportunities. And then after that, it's been all Zoom Teams. Thanks.
Yep, it's been the theme of the pandemic. Zoom or Teams or some other virtual platform. And you keep on mentioning cupcakes, and it's mid-afternoon. I'm starting to get hungry here. I think I know what I'm going to do after this session. I'm going to go grab myself a cupcake. Maybe a donut. Go to Timmy's there, grab myself. So So that's great news. Thanks for that. We from Cando side, that's our questions there. I may think of one here as a last one for you guys there, but just to seeing we have a number of people on there, is there anybody that has a question or recognizing Chief Willie is on? Also free if you want to share anything with us. So it was great to hear. And something I'll share with you. I think the first time I met Willie was, I think he was on council, and I was on council at the same time. I've had the economic development portfolio for my nation for the last 6 years. I think the first or second year that I had it was the first time I had the opportunity of meeting Willie, very like-minded in regards to entrepreneurial spirit and wanting to push economic development within our nations. Great to have you here, Willie. Any words you'd like to share?
No, I think the panelists have covered it. It's been very busy and stressful times here at WLFN, but I think one of the things that we can say, in great confidence, is we have a pretty special group here, a pretty special team. You can just see how Kirk has such a great grasp of the things that are happening and what we're doing and what we're continuing to get recognition for. Of course, the biggest one on the plate right now is our response to the St. Joseph's Mission and the investigation currently ongoing at St. Joseph's Mission. The outcry of support that we've had over the past couple of weeks is pretty uplifting, and just hold our hands up to this country and people from all around the world for reaching out and making sure that we're okay and offering their supports. It's funny that you bring up that that first meeting, because it's really crazy when you go on your journey and you start thinking about those interactions that leave such an amazing impression on you and the growth of your community. I mean, that one meeting that we had with Hewett, it didn't result in a crazy opportunity, but what it did was it created this connection, and you guys inspired us with the vision of Hewett. I don't know how many countless times I've brought up, whether to community members or to our staff and our council, the video, the Hewett's video that you showed to us at the start of your presentation. And we're just finalizing our own who we are video that was inspired by that one meeting, and just striving to uphold and find the balance on not only the economics, but the culture and the heritage and the language. That's how we justify things at WLFN. Yeah, we're economic powerhouses for our region, but it's allowing us to create this wealth that we can then reinvest back into our community for health and wellness supports, for culture, language, ceremony revitalization. And that's where we're seeing the uptake from the community, and the support that we've gotten as a council and as a staff is because we are finding the balance amongst those things, and people are starting to identify that, okay, although, I've grown up and I always thought mining was bad, there is a positive side of that. Resource extraction, there is a positive side to that, but there is a balance that we need to find throughout that process. And, that's the biggest challenge that we find at WLFN. And I think we're doing a pretty, amazing job at it. And as we move forward into the future of our community, it's exciting times. I mean, people are getting career jobs and buying houses, building houses, and having nice things and providing for their family. Those are success stories that even me personally and my family, that you wouldn't think would be attainable 10 years ago or 20 years ago, but they are today. And it's through these initiatives and through the hard work of our staff and leadership that we're able to do that. These small meetings or interactions that we have that have such major impacts, you just never know. You always have to approach it with an open mind. So thanks for that, Trevor, because we do appreciate your time and appreciate your words today. And all the other panelists, giving Trevor all the accolades. He's just the moderator. What the heck?
And Cynthia and Kirk and Brad are the stars, the EDOs that are in the boots on the ground, doing amazing work for their Indigenous communities. Very important. One thing that, and I'm glad you talked, Chief, because it you know, you hit on a very key point, which is balance. And I think that's the big opportunity working with Indigenous communities is Indigenous communities' vision and focus is always on balance and it's generational thought, how we do these things to make sure that it's those things are there for our children's children and for generations to come. So I think it's really good words. One last chance here for people. Anybody have any questions for our panelists? If not, one last thing that I'll share with you guys. Oh, hey, Ashley. Oh, no, she went with her video on and off. Looks like she's walking. To share with you guys, you know, it's great to have everybody here. And I hope everybody got something out of the sessions today. You know, thanks, Kirk, for joining us today on the panel and speaking about the great things that the Williams Lake Indian Band are doing. To Chief Willie and to the Williams Lake Indian Band, all the best and the work in regards to you guys are doing in regards to residential schools. It's created quite a conversation in Canada in regards to what we're doing and recognizing the impacts that residential schools have had. Brad, thanks again for joining us. You know, Niska has been long a part of treaty. You know, you guys signed your treaty a long time ago and been pursuing that sovereign right for decades now. So thank you for, again, providing us with your comments on what you guys are doing in Niska and the great things. And of course, Cynthia, my co-worker who works with me, my partner in crime in Hawaii. she's the brains behind all the speaking I do. I rarely touch the pen to paper, and Cynthia is the one that is the star that does a lot of the work for Hawaii, which is very significant. We signed our treaty in 2011. We've acquired over 700 acres of land since we signed treaty. We have over $20 million invested in our businesses, about $40 million in investments in all together. It's been very significant. I know there's a lot of work that's going around in Indigenous communities in BC and abroad, and it's great to see what everybody's doing and seeing what others here have been participating. So thanks again, everybody, for joining us today. And if you ever want to come back, you can go back on edo.ca, and our webinars are posted up on the website. So for myself, Trevor from Cando, Chu Kleko, thank you for joining us today and enjoy the rest of your week and day.
Afternoon, everybody.